Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And thank you for joining us for the Women in Business UAE and Singapore webinar organized by the UAE Singapore Business Council and the UAE Embassy in Singapore. First and foremost, please let me acknowledge our VIP attendees for today. Your Excellency, Sim Ann, Singapore Senior Minister of State for National Development and Foreign Affairs. Your Excellency, Shamma Faris Al-Mazrou'i, UAE Minister of Youth Affairs. Your Excellency, Jamal Abdullah Suwaidi, UAE Ambassador to Singapore and Patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council. Dr. Brian Shigar, President of the UAE Singapore Business Council. Distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Asma Al-Kindi from Buruj, and I'm an EXO member in the UAE Singapore Business Council, better known as UAE SBC, and I will be your MC for today. The UAE has celebrated recently the Emirati Women's Day in August with the theme of Women, Ambitious and Aspirations for the Next 50 Years, which comes in line with the 50th year of UAE National Day. Here in Singapore, 2021 has been dedicated as the year to celebrate Singapore women. The women in both countries are occupying leadership roles across all sectors, not just the stereotyping ones, but the real ones. That's why the UAE SBC and the UAE embassies in Singapore are proud to present to you for the first time ever a webinar that brings together successfully inspiring and dynamic women leaders in both countries. Please feel free to look into our program agenda as well as reading on the bios of our speakers and panelists in the booklet through the link we are posting on the Zoom chat. To begin the day event, I would like to invite UAE Ambassador to Singapore and Patron to the UAE Singapore Business Council, His Excellency Jamal Suwaidi, to give his welcome remarks. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Asma. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to the ones joining us from the UAE. Your Excellency, Sim Ann, Senior Minister of State, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of National Development in Singapore, Your Excellency, Shamma bint Al-Mazrou'i, Minister of State for Youth from the United Arab Emirates, Dr. Brian Shigar, President of the UAE Singapore Business Council, distinguished speakers, our friends in Singapore and the UAE, a very good day to you all. The UAE has adopted a remarkable stance in empowering women, setting new standards based on a unique model drawn from the vision of His Highness, late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the founding father of the United Arab Emirates. This approach draws from the natural role of women in the UAE's current leadership vision for the future, whereby women stand as an active partner in the country's development process and play a vital role in raising future generations. Emirati women have strong presence nationally and internationally. And according to Forbes Middle East 2021, the UAE ranked 23rd in a list of 100 countries focusing on women and business in the Middle East. The various government's initiatives contributes to the enhancement of women's participation to develop solutions for various national issues and employ them to serve the country and the citizen. Therefore, creating a dialogue between women in Singapore and in the UAE is a perfect opportunity to share and exchange ideas and insights about various challenges related to women in both countries and other parts of the world as well. The UAE Embassy, together with various institutions in Singapore and within its framework of its Empowering Women strategy, has organized few events pertaining to women where we created interactive discussion between youth entrepreneurs in Singapore and in the UAE. In addition to that, we have also organized an event where we explored women in academia in both countries. But today's webinar is special. It comes in the mid of several circumstances. Singapore, as my colleague Asma said, has dedicated the year 2021 to be the year celebrating Singapore women. Just last month, the UAE has celebrated its Women's Day. Moreover, we are indeed fortunate to have two brilliant ministers with us today, Her Excellency Shamma Al-Mazrou'i and Her Excellency Sim Ann, joined by distinguished speakers, and therefore I am confident that this webinar will be unique. Events like this webinar are extraordinary tools to establish an intellectual platform for women to create a network, showcasing successful female stories and their roles in their societies. Women in both Singapore and in the United Arab Emirates play crucial roles in the prosperity of their countries. Such achievements would not have been possible without the visionary and the exceptional leadership in both countries. I hope this event will attract more interest and curiosity in both countries to establish more links, more relations, and new platforms to exchange ideas and expertise, to permit and endure an enthusiastic learning experience. I would like to avail myself this opportunity to express my gratitude to the UAE and Singapore respective ministers, departments and organization representatives, and to be honest, to everyone who helped and provided any kind of support and assistance to make this gathering possible. I wish you all a very fruitful conversation, and thank you all very much. Thank you. Back to you, Asma.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And indeed, such a platform will help create and establish the dialogues between women across both countries. Thank you very much for that insightful speech. I now have the pleasure to invite our guest of honor to give the Singapore opening address, the Singapore Senior Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and National Development, Her Excellency Sim Ann. Your Excellency, please.
Thank you. Your Excellency Shama bin Suhail Fariz Al Mazrui, Minister of State for the Youth of the United Arab Emirates. Your Excellency Jamal Abdullah Al Suwaidi, Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to the Republic of Singapore and patron of the UAE SBC. Dr. Brian Shigar, President of the UAE SBC. Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking the UAE SBC for the kind invitation to address the participants of today's seminar on women in business, UAE and Singapore. I'm also very glad to see Minister Shama again since we last met in November 2019. I'm happy that the UAE SBC has chosen to highlight the important role which women have and are playing in businesses and building stronger economic ties between Singapore and the UAE. The seminar is especially timely since the UAE recently celebrated Emirati Women's Day on 28th of August, 2021, as our MC has also shared with us, is also the year of celebrating SG Women here in Singapore. Our two countries have made strides in creating opportunities for women to succeed. According to the 2020 UN Human Development Report, Singapore and the UAE are among the leaders in our respective regions when it comes to empowering women. In Singapore today, more than half of the women in our labor force now have at least tertiary level education, and the real median income for women has risen 32% in the last decade. Similarly, the UAE has consistently prioritized education as a key pillar of female empowerment. 77% of Emirati women today enroll in higher education, and women make up 70% of all university graduates in the UAE. I was also delighted to read that the scientific team behind the UAE's HOPE probe, which entered the orbit of Mars last February, was mostly female. Earlier this year, the UAE also named 28-year-old Noura Al-Matroushi as the country's first female astronaut. It is clear that Emirati women will continue to play a major role in the UAE's development. But even as we celebrate how far women in Singapore and the UAE have come, we can still do much more to empower our women. This is why Singapore launched the Conversations on Singapore Women's Development in September last year. 160 conversations involving more than 5,700 participants were held together with community partners to gather feedback on how we can further empower, protect, and uplift Singapore women. At the same time, the Singapore government has also been looking into more measures to protect the most vulnerable of women. For example, the Task Force on Family Violence brings together community partners and government agencies to jointly develop recommendations to tackle the issue of family violence. We are also examining ways to protect women in cyberspace. I co-chair the newly launched Alliance for Action to tackle online harms, especially those targeted at women and girls, alongside Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Communications and Information and the Ministry of Health, Ms. Rahayu Mazam. This alliance will focus on closing the digital safety gap and on taking action to enhance the freedom and safety of our women and girls in the digital future. Ladies and gentlemen, to enact real and lasting change, we also need to alter mindsets about the roles of men and women and break down unhealthy gender stereotypes. Women, for instance, often continue to take on a disproportionate load of household responsibilities in a home. This is a long process that will require the cooperation of every member of society. It is with this aim that the Ministry of Social and Family Development has dedicated 2021 as the year of celebrating SG women. This is an opportunity to take stock of the achievements made by our women and see how we can further fulfill their aspirations. Breaking down gender norms is important in the business world too. I'm thus pleased to note that women in Singapore have been making headway in the boardroom. In the first half of 2021, women represented 18% of the boards of the top 100 SGX listed companies, as compared to 7.5% in 2013. But we know there is more room for improvement. So in 2019, the Ministry of Social and Family Development established a council for board diversity under the patronage of President Halimah Yacob. This council has been tasked with promoting the increase in the number of women on boards of listed companies, statutory boards, and non-profit organizations. At this juncture, please let me highlight the important role that women here today can play in building up the next generation of female business leaders. As successful executives in your own right, you can act as mentors and role models, guiding young women as they make a difference in the workplace. At the same time, you also play an important role in strengthening the relationship between Singapore and the UAE. The numbers speak for themselves. The UAE is Singapore's largest trading and investment partner in the Middle East. But the strength of our ties goes beyond the statistics. Our two countries are both outward-looking, and we share a similar view on the important role women play in our societies. I'm happy to note that Singapore has also supported the development of promising young Emirati women through our capacity building programs. However, the task of taking our relations further does not fall solely on our governments. Each of you here can act as a bridge between Singapore and the UAE too, to help our peoples become even more interconnected. I understand that many of the Singaporean participants here today have a long-standing connection with the UAE. I would like to commend in particular Ms. May Chan, Director of DP Architects and an EXCO member of the UAE SBC. Ms. Chan and her team at DP Architects have worked hard to contribute towards the transformation of Dubai's skyline. She has been a very successful envoy for Singapore at the UAE. I encourage her and her team to continue their inspirational work in the UAE and beyond. I would like to end by congratulating the UAE for its tireless efforts to ensure the success of the Expo 2020 Dubai, which will open next month. I understand that there will be a special pavilion dedicated to women at the Expo, which will invite visitors to reflect upon the important contributions that women have made throughout history. This testifies to the importance that UAE places on women empowerment. Singapore looks forward to continuing our strong partnership with the UAE in this regard. Thank you, and I wish everyone a very fruitful discussion today.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for an inspiring speech on shedding the light on the effort that both countries are doing to support women and gender balance as well. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next guest of honor, to deliver Abu Dhabi and UAE opening address. The UAE Minister of Youth Affairs, Her Excellency Shamma bint Suhail Faris Al-Mazroui. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Minister Sim'an, it's so good to see you and reconnect. It's been a while since we met in Riyadh. Your Excellency Ambassador Jamal Al-Suwaidi, good morning to everyone. When we look up at night into the stars, do we ever think about who named them, who discovered what they are, how they function, how they impact our universe? Most astronomers we know were men, but there were far more women influencing astronomical science than is easy public knowledge. One of them is Helen Hogg. I'm a big fan of her, who was a great pioneer of modern astronomy. She's a Canadian known for her groundbreaking research, densely packed star structures, and that's what she focuses on. Anyway, these structures contain hundreds and thousands and sometimes millions of stars that helped astronomers estimate the age of the universe or locate the center of a galaxy. I can't help but think how many of us here in this virtual room are stars and star finders like Helen. Only our quest is stars of the humankind. How many of us were encouraged by other women to aim for our bright stars? How many of us want others to find the same joy in supporting rising female stars find their place in the universe? In this room of remarkable Emirati and Singaporean women, I see a lot of acting and potential Helen Hoggs. The idea that we women are a sky full of stars sticks with me. And when I think about the key to successful dial-moving collaborations within and among nations like Singapore and the UAE, here's why this metaphor is important. What would the world look like if instead of viewing ourselves as leaders at a vertical part of a pyramid, that is leaders higher than followers, we see ourselves as part of the great constellation? What would that world look like if we saw each other as stars, each as brilliant, each with their own special light, each with their own inherent power to illuminate their part of the universe? I believe with this lens, we would learn to see the value in others in a way that would help us grow and create together. We each know from our experience what and when it gave us the power to speak, to be heard, to have a voice. We were incredibly grateful, emboldened, and strengthened. And with this empathy, we have an unprecedented opportunity to give women their power to speak, to be heard, to pursue their dreams. And this idea can be found in a book by Ambassador Matthew Barzan. It's called The Power of Giving Away Power. And he suggests two things. Buy a little toy boat and a big one and put it on your desk at work. It reminds us that we need a big boat to hop on or hop in with the older, kind of wiser people that we can learn from. And then we must be willing and able to hop in the little boat with the younger people, younger so that we can help them row. This ability to go between worlds is what makes a phenomenal leader dedicated to service. And I think this analogy on giving power away really spoke to me as a way that our UAE leadership gives power to other women and girls. From holding over 60% of jobs in government to leading efforts on some of the most pressing challenges and opportunities, like our Minister of Food Security, Public Education, Culture, and others, and co-leading, like you said, Minister Sim'an, our latest Mars Hope mission, or legal equal pay for women, or at least one female sitting on every federal board. We are in the UAE paying special attention to young women, having voice and presence in decision-making. And young women are the future. We understand they are the little boats that will help the nation grow. And we need to constantly guide them so that they become the best big boats that they can be. We understand that we thrive when we help others. Empowering little boats alongside big boats is what is needed from political and organizational leadership. And this is the opportunity for women who are distinctly wired to cultivate hope. So how can women build bridges, especially to young girls? The world knows by now the importance and supporting data of giving women not just a seat at the table, but leading roles. And now for the benefit of our collective futures, we can take that extra step. Women in leadership can create a seat at every table for every other woman and for every other young girl. We can create multiple seats. As empowered women, let us prioritize empowering other women. Model for them to empower others. And I assure you, they pay it forward and empower others as well. This is the nature of women. Empowering them will most importantly empower other women to trust themselves. Let me zoom in the UAE. In the past 5 years, we've learned a lot about youth, their trust in government, why this matters, why this field. And I see firsthand every day that the incremental changes that empowered youth make in advising on policy, creating platforms, communicating directly with decision makers, I believe that trust starts with hope. It starts with honest conversation. It starts with inclusion and effective response to complexity and uncertainty. And this principle must directly translate to the way governments empower women and how we must do that as well. We recently celebrated Emirati Women's Day in the United Arab Emirates on August 28th. And I want to take a moment to highlight a few of the remarkable women in our nation states, not just in the UAE. And as we grow in the inspiration, let us think of ways in which we can help each other as women rise. And when I think of extraordinary Emirati women, there are so many. I want to begin and share deep gratitude to Her Highness Sheikha Fatma bint Mubarak, the true mother of our nation. There is no discussion about women without mentioning her rich wisdom and her graciousness, starting with her establishment of the Women's Union in 1973, just 2 years after the start of our nation. She ensured that women were central and supported from the beginning. And she confirms our belief that a nation cannot prosper without its women prospering. Since then, she has given life to humanitarian projects through the Emirati Red Crescent around the world from 1998 to 2014. Her accomplishments are merely a reflection of her strength, her grace, her dignity, embodying the remarkability to hold both simple, traditional values and inclusive tolerance for all people. She models our capacity as women to have arms wide open, enough to embrace everyone. Another woman, Her Highness Sheikha Manal bint Muhammad Barash Al Maktoum, is one of these exceptional women, holding up half of the sky, just like the Chinese proverb, with strong arms and a strong heart. She's the chair of Dubai Women's Establishment Endowment and the president of the Gender Balance Council. She is leading the charge to equip women to lead initiatives, influence policy, and shape learning in all sectors of the UAE. She is a champion to so many women in our nation. And today we honor these two women whose arms hold our sky and cover the breadth of so much that women can contribute to our world. So many women can influence at home and at work. Singapore. As a city of 64 islands, you know a lot about building bridges and connecting dots. A city of islands is somewhat like a constellation of stars. And I think that it's an important illustration of what we need to empower women in the 21st century. Let me start with your flag. Your flag is the very beacon of a young nation rising with its 5 stars that represent Singapore's core values of peace, of progress, of justice, democracy, and equality. Is any one element more important than another in your nation? I would guess not. And this illustrates is one thing. First of all, I believe that is any one woman more important than another? Does any star in the sky have more worth than another? I think we should all invest right now where we are yet. We can be much stronger together. What bridges can we build as strong working women between our two nations? What stars can we connect as constellations together as women? What platforms can we create together? What strength can we lend to one another by seeing all of our women, Singaporeans and Emiratis, as stars, not just a small few? The pandemic has shown that our world needs phenomenal leaders that create real paths to hope, now more than ever. And our two nations have remarkable, growing fast, breakneck speed, powerful contributions to empower women around the world that we can't truly miss. And I want to end today with 3 ideas on how to do this. Cultivate the qualities that empower real hope. There's 3 key values, driven behaviors, that the most fundamental behaviors that I think build forward a world where leadership can directly empower women around us. The first one, practice radical listening. not hearing sound, listening to the entirety of what a person is saying. We talk about listening in whole sight. Isn't this the most beautiful concept? Listening with both the rationality of the eyesight, but the compassion and love of the eye of the heart. To do this, we have to enter into a relationship beyond our concern. To really know the truth of someone, we must be intimately bound to them. So public and private sector leaders must commit to being intimately bound to listening to women, to the women we serve, and to their true needs in our lives. The second action, give women seats at every table. To design solutions that serve women needs and then empower and place them in positions that they can implement these initiatives. Step back from assumption and start asking, what does it mean for women to be in the driver's seat? What does it mean for women to be true co-pilots in every nation? For starters, in the UAE, it means more women have legitimate seats at the table and at every table. It means a seat at the table and action. It means seat at the table, not tokenism. It means make women authors of their future, not merely the beneficiaries. It also means the beauty of this behavior is completely feasible, affordable, and fun. My last action, and the third one, is give your power away. I talked about the book, Giving Away Your Power, and the big boats and the small boats, but cultivate the power to go back and forth between big women boats to learn from and little women boats to give that forward to. This doesn't mean lowering yourself beneath people. It means bringing others up at an equal level as yourself. It means our individual power is only as great as the empowerment we can give to those we serve. After all boats rise with the tide. Doing all of this as a conclusion requires courage. And it's very interesting. The origin of the word courage is cœur, the French word for heart. We must take heart to step out, to empower the women around us, and frankly, to continue to empower ourselves. Who doesn't want to throw out this word, how to be their best? I want to throw that idea. Who doesn't want to know how their most creative, their most fulfilled, most contented women are and where they are? When I'm in the company of women, there is only often a lot of flow. If we can master flow within ourselves and together with one another, there's no limits to what we can accomplish. So here is our own kind of women revolution in a way. It's time to rise. It's time for the rise of women. And today the world needs more women to rise. Surely, as the great conductor Le Brown said, if I'm not mistaken, even if we miss, we will land among the stars. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the inspiring speech and being influenced with that as well. I'm actually going to introduce our keynote speakers as guests, as stars. And the first star we have today to open our keynote speech is Ms. Chu Kim. Ms. Chu was the first woman in over a decade to win Singapore's Businessman of the Year in 2014, and she's on the list of Forbes magazine Richest Person in Singapore. After graduating from the National University of Singapore, Ms. Chu earned a degree in law and worked at Drew & Neighbor for 3 years before leaving to join her family's investment group, Ticity. She succeeded her late grandfather, Singapore's top financial leader and philanthropist, Mr. Tan Chen Tuan, in 2005, where she became the executive chairperson of Ticity Group. Since 2009, Ms. Chu assumed the chairmanship of the Singapore Trading Company, a 133-year-old firm that has evolved into a modern, publicly listed investment company with a diversified assets in real estate, hospitality, resources, and investments in the Asia Pacific. And now it gives me the pleasure to invite the star, Ms. Chu, for the stage, please.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Sim Ann, Singapore Senior Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and National Development, Your Excellency Shama Faris Al Mazrui, UAE Minister for Youth Affairs, Your Excellency Jamal Abdullah Al Suwadi, UAE Ambassador to Singapore and patron of the UAE SBC, Dr. Brian Shager, President of the UAE SBC, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am deeply honored to be here today. And I must confess that this introduction is a little too flattering, but nonetheless, thank you. Present with us today are many distinguished women of the UAE and Singapore who have also each made their mark in different fields. And I thank our UAE Business Council for inviting me and including me into this group. Today's topic covers many aspects. And rather than try to cover many things, I thought I would share my thoughts and reflections on women and the progress we have made and my own personal experiences. First, let us remind ourselves of early trailblazers. We think of the issue of women today as a modern issue, but as early as the 15th century BC, we had the female pharaoh Hatshepsut. And in China, during the Tang Dynasty, we had Empress Wu Zetian. In the 18th century, Russia was ruled by Catherine the Great. So we have many trailblazers before us. However, for the large part of recent history, women did not receive equal treatment. And the right to vote in Western democracies only came as a result of the suffragettes in the 19th century. Women's rights and treatment reflect the social values and mores of a society, which in turn are dependent on a country's religious or governing philosophy, as well as the geopolitical issues prevailing. We are all familiar with tragic stories of female infanticide in countries such as India and China, where women were seen as a burden on families. Such values reflect a society where male dominance, aggression, and strength is more highly prized than the soft skills found in women. However, World War II changed the situation in some countries. In China, Chairman Mao was one of the first to acknowledge the contributions of women by pointing out that they hold up half the sky. In Singapore, following World War II, large numbers of women entered the workforce, primarily because there were very few young men. Allow me to tell you a little story. My late grandfather told me that he had never had a female secretary till after World War II. But because there were not enough men, he had to hire a woman. And when he did, the concern was that he might not be proper. So before he could hire his secretary's grandmother asked to interview him to confirm that he was proper and then allowed him to hire her. Of course, the world is very different today. And as a businesswoman, I have often been asked what more can be done to improve gender equality. However, as far as Singapore and the UAE are concerned, two of the key challenges that hinder gender inequality have already been addressed. One, educational opportunities. Two, mindset change, something that Minister Sim Ann also had alluded to. Education is the key catalyst to raising the employability and productivity of a country's workforce. If women are educated in every field and at every level, a country is, in our business language, value adding and enhancing half its human workforce. However, educational opportunities do not arise just because the government or the private sector provides schools and institutions. It must come with a change in the mindsets of society, parents, and teachers. There should not be a preconceived view that this is what girls can do or cannot do. Instead, girls should be given the same opportunities to study everything that the boys do. Whether there are genetic propensities or inclinations, that is something to be left to the individual. The desire to learn is the same for girls and boys. And I'm delighted to see that in the UAE, there are so many women who, given the opportunity, have now made it into space. Earlier, I had said that in certain societies, male dominance, aggression, and strength are more highly prized than soft skills. In such societies, men and boys are treated better. Ironically, in today's modern society, particularly in developed countries where technology is pervasive, intellect is usually prized more than physical strength. Consensus and collaboration are more important than individual skills. And as a result, I would not be surprised to see that in the future, women may be more highly prized and more valuable and more useful than men. Studies have suggested that matching women's labor force participation to men could add US 28 trillion to global GDP by 2025. In the Gulf countries alone, achieving full gender parity and workforce participation could, according to McKinsey, add US 830 billion or 32% to GDP. Legislation is another reason for women's progress. In the Middle East and North Africa, the UAE has seen 20 legislative reforms enacted over the last 3 years to improve the lot of women. These include equal pay for men and women and legislation prescribing that all listed companies in the UAE must have at least one female director. As a result, UAE has climbed 48 positions to 72nd place in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index 2021. Furthermore, the UAE has been ranked best in the Middle East and North Africa region for the economic participation of women by the World Bank. Singapore, in contrast, saw legislative change much earlier. In 1961, we passed the Women's Charter, which recognized the rights of women. It prohibited polygamy and prescribed matrimonial rights for women. Now, viewed through the lens of the 21st century, this doesn't seem a big deal. But what the legislation did at that time was to create a mindset change. It emphasized to society that women had rights. Another development that has been taken for granted in Singapore is affordable, formal, institutional education. The Compulsory Education Act in Singapore is the successor to the Education Act, which provided for the establishment and maintenance of an integrated education system. This education of a large proportion of our population in the 1960s and 70s was the result of an economic imperative. As a corollary benefit, literacy for women in Singapore went up significantly. With education and economic development came employment opportunities and increased labor force participation. Today, Singapore is placed 54th on the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index out of 156 countries and 11th in the United Nations Human Development Report among 162 countries. May I share with you the importance of mindset by sharing a personal anecdote. When I was a young lawyer practicing corporate finance in Drew and Napier in the 1980s, one of my female colleagues asked me, "What's it like to be the only woman in an all-men's team? And I was shocked by that question. Hitherto, it never occurred to me that I was the only woman. I just thought of myself as a team member. I tell this story to illustrate the importance of mindset. I was educated. I had gone through the same university and courses as the men. And because there was a job to do, I did it. It did not occur to me that there should be any difference whether I was male or female, as long as I could do the job. I dare say that my boss thought the same. And this is the point about education and job opportunities. Once all are equally educated, it's all about opportunity and a mindset change. You look at the job, you don't look at whether it's a man or a woman applying for it. Reflecting on this issue of mindset change, I have come to appreciate how privileged I was with regard to opportunities for women. The men in my family were broad-minded. My late maternal grandmother was allowed to go to school. She played tennis and golf. She was the first woman to get a hole-in-one in a country club. She was also a justice of the peace. My mother is an ophthalmologist. At a time when few women became doctors, she decided to specialize in eye surgery. As you can see, I did not grow up in a home where there was seen to be a difference between genders. This mindset difference in the home is critical if women are to be able to see themselves as equal. Much has been said about the lack of gender diversity in the boardroom. So I will now come to this other arena. Globally, women represent just 27% of all managerial positions. However, I am optimistic that this number will increase. It is beholden on our generation to ensure that this open mindset that our two countries have embraced and which have provided opportunities to women will be maintained, if not improved. I am less worried about the existence of a glass ceiling arising from gender prejudice in either Singapore or the UAE. I think the absence of leadership roles for women at present is because previous generations of women were not given the opportunity and so did not make it to the relevant social circles. What do I mean by social circles? Currently, because of tradition, there are still activities that men and women tend not to do. For example, the men tend to go drinking or play golf. While we may each have our view on such activities, it does allow them to bond and to get to know each other better. It is difficult for a man to get to know a woman better in such a manner. Let me tell you another story. I was invited to sit on the board of a listed company in Singapore, but I declined. I offered to introduce other women for the post, pointing out that they were far better qualified than I. The CEO replied, "Thank you, but no, we don't know them." I venture to say that this is the primary reason women are not invited into the boardroom. It is not because they are less good or that men do not like women. By not fraternizing with these men in the same manner, these men do not know them as well as they would a male colleague. I would not go so far as to criticize this male bonding. There are clear rules and processes for selecting directors, but it is only human nature to prefer to work with people you know. And unfortunately, you can't go to a man, try to bond and say, "Would you like to go shopping with me?" Nonetheless, with education, a change in societal mindset, the ability of women to mix more freely socially, I see such obstacles slowly disappearing. I also think that the younger men of today are more open to inviting women to join them in leadership positions. Their educated mothers, their working mothers, have resulted in their mindset change. Moreover, studies have shown that companies with female executives perform better. And I venture to say that this is not sex discrimination against men, but rather an illustration of the benefits of diversity in a group. As Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook, said, "In the future, there will be no female leaders. There will just be leaders." This short quote highlights the lens through which society views leadership. Today, we continue to make the distinction between male and female leaders. The better question should be, who is a good leader? I believe that the ingredients of leadership are the same: competence, courage, the ability to make decisions, the ability to manage people, the ability to maneuver in a world that is fast changing, and the ability to guide a team through it. Singapore and the UAE have made tremendous strides in women's rights, but we should remember that much of the progress we have made is a result of the many female trailblazers and pioneers who have paved the way for us. It is also the result of the many men who have mentored and taught us, as well as the people, our families, our colleagues, our counterparts, who have viewed us as equals. Both countries have made huge changes in terms of legislation, as well as mindset change to emphasize that all are equal. And it is only with equality and fair treatment that the world will be a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the inspiring speech and for sharing your personal experience. It's really stories that add value and show us how mindset could really impact the way we progress and the way opportunities are made, and how we as women as well take chance on that, and how men plays a role in our progress. Thank you very much. Our second star for today, Dr. Lamia Nawaf Fawaz. Dr. Lamia is the Executive Director of Brand and Strategic Initiatives at Masdar. Masdar is Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, which is a major international player in renewable energy and sustainable urban development. Since joining Masdar in 2018, Dr. Lamia has overseen key strategic platforms such as the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, which is a global catalyst for accelerating the world's sustainable development. She is also the director of Zayed Sustainability Prize, an annual award that recognizes the rewards, pioneers, and innovative solutions across the sustainability spectrum. Concurrently, Dr. Lamia is a program director of WISER, the UAE-led Women in Sustainability, Environment and Renewable Energy Initiative. Prior to joining Masdar, Dr. Lamia was the Vice President of Institutional Advancement and Public Affairs at the Masdar Institute of Science and Technology, the world's first graduate-level university dedicated to advanced energy and sustainable technologies. Dr. Lamia graduated from the George Washington University with a doctorate in higher education administration, and she holds a master's degree in information system technology. Please welcome with me the star, Dr. Lamia Fawaz. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Asma, for that kind introduction. Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers and guests, good morning from Abu Dhabi. And thank you to the Embassy of the UAE in Singapore and the UAE-Singapore Business Council for organizing this event and giving me the opportunity to participate in this dialogue between the businesswomen of the UAE and Singapore. This webinar is addressing a critically important emerging reality. Women empowerment is crucial to economic growth, and countries that wish to thrive must find ways to help women reach their full potential. Fortunately, both the UAE and Singapore recognize gender diversity as an opportunity for growth and prosperity. Both nations are focused on achieving an ambitious innovation ecosystem that is underpinned by strong government support for women's equal participation in the world of business and at all levels of public and social life. As the UAE marks its golden jubilee, it leads the region on gender parity, inspired by the wisdom of our leadership. On the eve of Emirati Women's Day, on August 28th, the Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, acknowledged the importance of women, saying, "We believe that one woman has the strength of 1,000 men." Today, Emirati women hold prominent positions in government and business. And seeing women in senior roles and leadership positions, especially in fields traditionally dominated by men, can inspire girls and young women to become leaders themselves. I was extremely privileged to grow up with a mother who was the first woman in the UAE to receive a doctorate degree and went on to hold the highest government position a woman had ever achieved in the country at that time, as Assistant Undersecretary of the Ministry of Education. My father instilled the value of a good education and encouraged me to study abroad, which I did, and after which point I started my career in the sustainability and clean energy sector. During that time, the workplace has changed significantly. Technological advancements are transforming every industry and revolutionizing how we live and work. Artificial intelligence, automation, and robotics are expected to create new jobs as well as eliminate several existing ones. The UAE, like Singapore, is a leader in technology adoption, transforming its economy into a model where growth is driven by knowledge and innovation from a highly skilled workforce. This year, both the UAE and Singapore were placed in the top 10 of the IMD World Competitive Rankings, recognizing that innovation, digitalization, and social cohesion have been key to their economic performance. But we must ensure that we leverage the potential of technology and innovation in a way that will advance our sustainability and gender parity goals. One of the ways we can achieve this is through establishing programs that advance women's participation in all levels of decision-making, programs that give women the right skills and resources to effectively lead the change to a more sustainable world. Here in the UAE, and as mentioned by Her Excellency Minister Shamma, we are forever blessed by the wisdom of Her Highness Sheikha Fatma bint Mubarak, the Mother of the Nation, who recently launched the first National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, helping to empower women by building their skills and capabilities in all sectors. Elsewhere, programs like the World Bank's Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative are doing invaluable work in helping women entrepreneurs across the developing world set up their own businesses by providing access to $354 million in funding from 14 different governments, including the UAE. At Masdar, we believe strongly in the empowerment of women as we move ahead with consolidating our position as a global leader in renewable energy and sustainable urban development. I am proud to lead the division at Masdar that is made up of 65% females. I also have the privilege of overseeing several initiatives that advance the cause of women and girls around the world. The first initiative is Women in Sustainability, Environment, and Renewable Energy, or what we call WISER, is dedicated to inspiring women to play an active role in addressing global sustainability challenges. This month, we launched a mentorship program for our WISER pioneers, young girls and working professionals, to help them excel in their careers through guidance from senior figures across various industries. Our second initiative, Youth for Sustainability, or Y4S, is dedicated to inspiring youth to be the sustainability leaders of tomorrow. Since the launch of Y4S in 2016, nearly 20,000 students and young professionals have engaged with the program. The UAE has made great strides in the last 50 years, but as we look ahead to the next 50, we must work together to ensure that women benefit equally from the opportunities created in an ever-changing world. Because when women thrive, humanity thrives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lamia. And indeed, Sheikha Fatma is and continue to be a role model which we all look up to, such as yourself as well and the ladies we have in today's event. So thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have reached the panel discussion segment of this webinar. If you have any questions, please make sure that you type them in the Q&A chat. We will not be able to take any questions in the normal chat window. We'll do our best to ensure that we answer all your questions. In case time did not allow, we will be able to revert you back by email once we discuss further with the respective speaker. If you intend by your question to ask or address a specific speaker, please make sure to indicate the name of the speaker before or after the question when you type it in. Without further ado, let me introduce the panelists for today. Representing UAE, Ms. Shada Isa, Founder and Creative Director, Shada Isa. Ms. Salama Al-Shamsi, Qasr Al-Hisn and Other Historic Sites Director, Abu Dhabi Department of Culture and Tourism. Representing Singapore, we have Ms. Michelle Chu from Miwa Group, and we have Ms. Helene Raudeshel, Founder and Chairperson of Indoguna Productions FZC. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me the pleasure to hand over the proceeding for the moderator of our panel discussion, Ms. May Chan, Director, DB Architect, and an EXO member of the UAE Singapore Business Council. Ms. May.
Thank you very much, Asma. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for spending your afternoon or morning with us for this event. I would like to ask the various panelists a few questions as we go, and maybe what you could do is, if you have questions for them, please let us know in the Q&A, and then we will take your questions at the end after the panelist has answered and spoken and had some discussion with us. Salama, I will start with you. You have an impressive and multidimensional background, including history, culture, culinary arts, entrepreneurship, and project management. Did you encounter any resistance or obstacles in your various pursuits and achievements arising from you being a female Emirati? Maybe you could share with us?
Sure. Thank you very much, May. Good morning, everyone, viewers and all. I'm privileged to be here with you today, and I would like to thank the organizers for this fruitful and insightful discussion and all the amazing speeches we heard today. As you said, May, there is a time where you have to just pause and stop and look at all the previous achievements and the previous challenges as well that have passed by in your life. And for me in particular, this happened recently, and it is such an inspiring moment to really look into what achievements you have passed throughout your career, but also throughout your education, like in university and in school as well. For me, to answer in particular any challenges or any obstacles,
yeah.
But those challenges and those difficulties actually made me grow stronger and make me develop even better, and make me even more determined to reach my goal, or to reach to where I wanted to be at a certain time. Starting from the environment you are in, starting from your surroundings, starting from a supportive group that you have. I believe it's very important to have a support group, whether it was your friends or your family, or even your coach at the gym, or someone that you can talk to and you're inspired to do that. It's very important to have someone that is holding your hands and taking you hand by hand and really giving you this inspiration from within. Going to inspiration from within, I think this is the most valuable thing that I would say to everyone, especially the younger generation, come and talk to me and come and get advice. If you don't have the inspiration from within, it's very difficult for you to pursue or to go or to where you want to go. And for me, as Her Excellency Shama Al-Mazroui mentioned, we don't say female leaders. I really believe that as leaders today here in the UAE, like we don't really differentiate if she's a woman or she's not. It's just being a leader and being the star and being shining there out there in your field. And the last thing that I want to say, and I think it is the most important factor of us being where we are today, is of course the leadership and the name of the mother of the nation, Her Highness, mentioned so many times, and I cannot hold myself against her team as well. She's one of the most inspiring factors for us all Emirati women.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Salama. I do agree with you that many times, you know, as women, it's not going into a situation and say that, oh, how do I deal with it because I'm a woman? It's how to fix the problem as it is, right? Regardless of what it is. And as you correctly said, support in all, whether it's a gender basis or not, is always important. Salama, could you share a bit about yourselves? We have some slides that we're going to show, and maybe you can share a bit about yourself as well in this segment.
Sure. So talking about my government job, which is the director of Qasr al-Hifan, which is the oldest historic site in Abu Dhabi Island, and also the director of the historical sites in Al Ain. There are main components. If we start with Qasr al-Hasan, there's the Qasr al-Hasan, which is the fort, and then you have the House of Artisans, which is dedicated to artisans and the handicrafts of the cultural heritage of the United Arab Emirates. But there are also the other beautiful sites that you see in Al Ain, the Fort, the Oasis as you see on the screen. There's the Qatar Art Center. So the main mission of the Department of Culture and Tourism is really to disseminate the cultural heritage of the United Arab Emirates to the viewers, to the visitors, to the residents, to the Emiratis, but also to tourists, and most importantly to the younger generation. How can we include them in this amazing scope of the culture sector? How can we have them to be, let's say, more appealing to them, the younger generation? As you can see here on the screen, just perfectly as I was saying, in House of Artisans, for example, we create those beautiful Nike sneakers using the weaving of the cedar, for example, that our precious artisans work on. We create digital and online programming for the younger generations. You know, now they're all hooked onto YouTube and on TikTok and all of that. So we also try to reach this segment of the market, doing so much different programming out there, especially with COVID-19. I believe my team, I'm proud to say that they excelled in that. They immediately adapted into what is needed today in the market and what is needed today with the current global situation. So I would like to also say that also managing those, operating those sites, it's such a pride to be there walking around and looking at what the ancestors built, what was the history, what was the story of the nation, what is the memory of this in the different rooms and the different buildings that you go into. This is kind of what I'm working on, but there's a lot to say about the history and the art and the culture of the United Arab Emirates, and which is dominant by women, by the way, very proudly to say, and also a big shout out to all male colleagues I have. I mean, we're all one, we're all equal, and very proud part of the Department of Culture and Tourism. Culture and art and history is, I believe, my interest, my inspiration, but also it's in my blood since I was at a young age. So I'm very proud to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Salama. Thank you so much for sharing your work as the director at the Qasr al-Hussan in Historic Sites, as the director of Abu Dhabi Department of Culture and Tourism. Your enthusiasm and from the sharing of the slides has led us to know a lot more about what you do. Next, I would like to introduce our next panelist, Michelle Cho. She is the CEO of Mewa Group. Michelle, would like to, maybe you could share some background on yourself first, and then I'll ask you some questions. Thank you, Michelle.
Hi, May. Thank you, and pleasure to be with all of you today. It is a real pleasure to have this platform and to hear the sharing from so many talented women professionals as well. So I'm the CEO of Mewa International, and we are listed on the SGX, and we are primarily, we are a food company with manufacturing in Malaysia. We have over 9 factories in Malaysia, and we have also a presence in Indonesia. We sell to over 100 countries.
Thank you, Michelle. Michelle, you have worked with Exxon after your outstanding academic achievement in university, and understand that subsequently you joined the Meiwa Group. What are the factors that persuaded you to leave a global MNC such as Exxon and work for a medium-sized company with such a strong presence in the palm oil sector? How did you decide?
Oh, well, I've enjoyed all my jobs. Working with Exxon was very exciting. At that point in time, we had, this was pre 9/11, when it was still easy to go on to Jurong Island. And we were part of the original crew that had to set up in the chemical complex, and I was working in the alcohol plant, and that was very exciting times. Similarly, when I'm with Meiwa, it is, I think Meiwa is very good because it gives you a presence to be able to build and grow a business and to make a real impact. So with Meiwa International, we were one of the first few to also be take part in the government's health promotion board plan to sell healthier cooking oil. During COVID, we were also part of the supply chain to make sure of essential services, to make sure that the food supplies were not disrupted. And this, of course, gives a lot of fulfillment in what I do, because food is a very essential part of everything in our daily lives.
I see. Thanks, Michelle. Do you see any challenges? Were there any challenges transitioning from an MNC to an executive company director? And were these gender-centric or just any challenges or differences just anyone would encounter changing from an MNC to a more executive company role?
Well, I think that basically if you want to focus on gender, etc., it really doesn't help the issue. Meiwa has been a company that was, I think, a survey. We were the ranked number 1 in terms of medium-sized companies, and I've been very lucky and very blessed to have a lot of positive role models, women and men, who have helped and guided my career throughout the career. And I would say that if you were to look at the senior management at Meiwa, there are also a lot of women, as well as people of different nationalities within the company, and that this diversity has helped us because we sell in 140 over countries, and that, of course, is also a joy to work with.
Thanks, Michelle. I guess you corroborate the same story that doesn't matter whether there's gender issues. I think the main thing is about the company and the work that you do. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing. Next, we have another panelist, Ms. Shatta Al-Mulla. She's the founder and creative director of Shatta Essa. Shatta, how are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me today.
Good. I believe you have some slides to share. Maybe you would like to take us through them and explain a bit about what you do. I'm amazed by the wonderful designs on it, just to be a spoiler about it.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I would like to start off by thanking the UAE Embassy in Singapore and the UAE Singapore Business Council for organizing this remarkable webinar. It's an honor to be here speaking alongside such prominent speakers. Let me walk you through those slides. Shatta Essa is a women's wear brand that focuses on luxury kaftans. I launched this label back in 2017 with a capital of around $82,000 US. And I had three employees to help me with absolutely everything. We managed to break even a month after we launched the brand. And today we have around 40 employees in the company. I'm proud to say that in 2018, we built a school in a rural area in Nepal in association with Dubai Cares. Our main focus of the brand is to focus on supporting education and mothers and to nourish and expand their horizons. Then in 2019, due to popular demand, we launched our first noir line, which explores evening gowns. By the end of that year, we were approached by international stores based in the US and some in Europe, such as Farfetch and Moda Operandi, and many others to stock the brand. In 2020, we signed the contracts and we were live internationally. Last but not least, to celebrate the UAE's Golden Jubilee, which marks the 50th anniversary of the UAE, we have dedicated this year to support and honor local Emirati women who are so skilled in their traditional UAE crafts and their weaves. So this gives you a small brief about the brand, and here are some photos of our collections. Everything you see here is handmade and carefully designed and produced in our 6,000 square foot production facility here in Dubai. Thank you all for listening. So this is just a brief about the brand.
Thank you so much, Shata. Very beautiful designs. Shata, we'd like to ask you something. You're a mother of 3 and you established a non-profit motherhood organization called A Dozen Mamas. You have also achieved international fame as a fashion designer and yet found time to collaboratively establish a school in rural Nepal. So what are the motivating factors that propel you to do such things in diverse areas?
Emerging from an industry led by foreign brands, I tried to challenge societal norms and serve as a platform not only to design garments for women across the world, but also to serve communities in need and support artisans and craftsmen from different cultures and nationalities. So within the company, within our like the employees of the company, we have people from different cultures, people from different nationalities, so that we can tap into different crafts and different backgrounds. The concept of Shada Isa emerged out of a strong bond between my kids and I. Inspired by love, I envisioned a fashion brand that connects mothers to their children, which is why we strive to support education all around the world and to support mothers in the fashion field. As a proud Emirati lady, I draw my inspiration from our visionary leaders who strive to always be the best. As His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid once said, the race for excellence has no finish line, which is why I consider myself to be at the beginning of that race.
I see. Thank you, Shata. So I guess we can safely say that your background as a mother and an Emirati lady and the culture that you know from all this actually motivated you to do what you're doing, and especially even things like establishing a school in Nepal, right? It's for the children after all. Yes. Thank you very much for sharing, Shata. We'll be back to everyone later with the questions from Q&A. Now, our last panelist today, but not least, is Ms. Helene Raudershaw. Ms. Helene, thank you and good to see you again. Maybe you could share a bit about yourselves before we get into some questions.
Thank you, May. Thank you, Dr. Brian Shea and UAE SPC, inviting me to this platform. It's a topic of keen interest for myself. Good afternoon, good morning, Your Excellencies, Dr. Brian Shager, distinguished guests, and fellow participants. My name is Helene Raudershaw. I've been in the food business for the past 26 years, and I've been involved in various parts of Asia and the Middle East over the years, and involved in a number of businesses that contribute to somewhat of better eating experiences for people in general. Over the last years, I've been passionate about building businesses that manufacture, supply, distribute, sells high quality premium tasty food products from around the world. Today, we operate in 6 countries across Asia Pacific and the Middle East, namely Cambodia, Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore, Thailand, UAE, and Vietnam. My love affair with UAE started in 2004. I arrived as a tourist at that time with my mother, with my sister, and with my Indonesian lady partner. In fact, it was 4 women arriving in 2004, meeting one person in UAE to introduce us to the food business. I was instantly attracted to the country. I saw a lot of similarities to Singapore at that time. But what inspired me most at that time was the vision that UAE has transpired at that time, giving people the opportunity to start businesses, to start new ideas and new concepts. I feel that the country could present another great platform and opportunity for me to share my passion and love for the food business. And indeed, we did. Since 2004, we have launched a number of businesses that surround the exciting food space in UAE and the Middle East. In 2004, our first distribution company in Laguna, Dubai was set up and started business in 2005. 2012, we starting to brainstorm and design and build our current manufacturing facility based in Jebel Ali. And then in 2017, our gourmet food shop, Maxi, the Good Food Shop in Al Quoz, has been established and is now operational. In fact, we are now starting our second store opening near Motor City, which is going to be a very exciting and dynamic food truck. And in 2020, Arlene World was born for the vegan, plant-based eating concepts. After that many years in the food business, having dealt with many categories of food, today my passion is all about a world of eating better for yourselves, eating healthier, but yes, still eating deliciously. And of course, on top of that is that how can we do more in our daily lives to contribute to a better planet? This has become my lifelong passion and mission today, to contribute to influence our friends, our communities about eating better for yourselves and doing better for the planet. Being in the food space for a long time, I know that eating well is always the biggest contributor to one's health and one's self-satisfaction. I'm also very much a big believer that we control what we eat, and it is something that we can control for what we put inside the body, and something else we can't control is perhaps the air we breathe, perhaps the water we drink, but food is definitely something you can control. Our latest creation of Arlene is based on a plant-based eating concept, eating better for yourselves and doing better for the planet. Before I end my introduction, I would like to share with you a quick video about this movement.
Thank you, Helene. Helene, you definitely have the
founders who are moms and dads and kids and families committed to inventing and sharing foods they love.
I'm in the 3rd generation in the food business.
Helene, I think there's an issue with your sharing. The video is not coming on. We can hear it, but we can't see it.
And they all inspire the design of the dishes at Arlene. It is very important for us to create food that. Okay, so you can see it, is it?
Yeah, maybe you can share the screen and relaunch it. Thank you.
Could you see the video now?
Who is Arlene? Founders who are moms and dads.
No, we can hear it, but we can't see it.
Families.
Okay, maybe I'll just share a link later on the chat.
It's okay, we can try to launch the video from here in a bit. Maybe, Helene, let me ask you a question while we try to launch the video here for you. You have established probably Singapore's largest manufacturing facility in the F&B sector in UAE, which is impressive for Singapore businesswomen. I mean, considering your traditional strength is in the East and Southeast Asia. What are the challenges in the process of establishing your operations there? I mean, moving from Singapore to Dubai, for architecture work was one thing for me, but operations for you, I'm sure that's a whole new ballgame altogether. Could you share some with us?
I think the basics of the business model and the business philosophy has remained the same when we moved from Singapore to UAE. That has not changed. And our philosophy and our beliefs in what could be done and what satisfies the customers and the consumers has not changed. Of course, the country, the regulations, the policies, all these are different. But nevertheless, I think that in all the countries that we've operated, every country presents their advantages and every country presents their challenges. And I think that, like many of our fellow speakers earlier that mentioned, is about getting the job done, getting it fixed, getting it resolved. I do not see that it was more difficult. Every new business presents its own challenge. Even today, if I open a new business or start a business in Singapore, it will present many challenges as well.
True, true. So it's about having to grapple with the different countries' guidelines and just all in a day's work of making it work in that country, right? If you want to set up there.
I won't say it's in a day's work. I think it's for many days of exploration, breaking it down one by one. It's almost like a Lego that you put bricks on bricks together and make it work. And hopefully it doesn't, miss one Lego in between or something like that. But it certainly was it's like putting a puzzle together. Yeah, and the end goal is the same for myself and the team. And no matter how many Lego we put down, the end goal is the same. And I think every country we has been operating in that mode.
I see. Just trying to build it up and get all the pieces in place, right?
That's right.
So yeah, regardless of gender or anything, I think that's not the main issue.
I think one of the things about this is that, to be honest, in the beginning days, I did read up a lot about the culture and what Middle East expect of a female or women in all aspects of life being there. I did read up and research about how one mannerisms or company policies and things like that is different. But I have to say now, after 17 years of operation, I myself, being an investor, being a resident for that many years, I have not really felt anything different than I was in Singapore or in Hong Kong. I felt we were all treated equally. And in fact, I had a lot of assistance from the government departments since early days to assist in the projects that we were doing.
Yeah. I think we can't, regardless of the culture of each place, and we all read up to make sure we're in the best standing when we go there. I think we can't ask for a better place than the UAE, which is open for business anyway. So that already in itself, like you said, when you said that people help you, as you do it, I got help as I got through, and not because I'm female or anything, but it's just that UAE is a great place to do business, right? And for Singaporeans going there, and we're trying to get businesses going, I think it's a good place. Yeah, and very easy. Maybe now we'll just pause for a bit and let us show your video.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who is Arlene? Founders who are moms and dads and kids and families committed to inventing and sharing foods they love.
I'm in the third generation in the food business. I love cooking, experimenting new recipes. The world has so many rich food cultures, and they all inspire the design of the dishes at Arlene. It is very important for us to create food that is delicious and convenient.
At Arlene, we eat our own don don noodles, our spicy kebabs, the siu mai we make, because what's good for our families is something we want to share. Who is Arlene? A team of global chefs collaborating to create the tastiest plant-based cuisine, inspired by fresh farmers markets, your favorite neighborhood restaurant, the dumplings your mom makes. Who is Arlene? Passionate health-seeking foodies who know delicious and healthier can coexist without compromise. Who is Arlene? Flexitarians, vegetarians, vegans, and yes, meat lovers who know that more plant-based meals are better for our health and for our planet.
So the inspiration of being a flexitarian really came from my son Max. Flexitarian is a simple idea. Eat less meat and favor a plant-based diet. Arlene was created to provide a great variety of vegan eating, which is delicious, healthier choice, and at the same time, giving a little bit back to the planet.
Arlene is a new collection of delicious plant-based meals created by chefs in a global kitchen. Convenient, healthier for you and the planet, and available now. Learn more at arlene.world.
Thank you, Helene. Now we'll move on to the question and answer. We have some on the question and answer of the webinar. The first one is to you, Salama.
Yes.
Salama, the question is, will Casa Al Hosn be showcasing its exhibits at the Dubai Expo? Besides the annual festival, are there other events where handicrafts related to the oasis, desert weaving and coastal heritage be on display? Are there workshops to impart the craft of the artisans? So is there any intention to, in the upcoming projects by the Casa, to dive into the heritage and achievements of the Nahyan family?
Okay,
So
great.
that's quite a lot of questions, Salama. Go ahead.
But thankfully, I have answers for them all. So yes, we will of Expo proudly will be part of actually Minassa, which will be dedicated to crafts and design. So there will be some products from House of Artisans exhibited there, and it's all about the weaving and handicrafts. And there will also be some exhibits part of the bigger Department of Culture and Tourism in terms of tourism and historical places, of course. The other question is, are there any events apart from the annual festival? Yes, we actually will be launching some online workshops and programs. We never stopped actually. We had several also throughout the summer. But there will be more physical events happening on site from October onwards. And the main focus this year, of course, will be the festival, but also around the festival, there will be a lot of activations related to the 50th Golden Jubilee of the United Arab Emirates and up to April. So there will be events throughout, and you can find out more about it on our social media accounts and Instagram and on our website and on Facebook and Twitter as well. The last question is, are there workshops that aim on to impart crafts and artisans? Actually, this is the one before the last question. Yes, we do have weekly workshops in House of Artisans. Again, you can visit our website and our Instagram account. I will ask someone to put it for you in the chat so you can look at. The last question is will there be projects to dive into the heritage and achievements of the Al Nahyan family? The main exhibits of Qasr Al Hassan, it's all about the history of the UAE and the different leaders of Bani Yas and Al Nahyan who ruled Abu Dhabi throughout the history of Abu Dhabi and the United Arab Emirates. So if you want to know more about it, again, please do visit us. You will know more about the achievements of the Al Nahyan, and also you can read a lot about it in our website and on Abu Dhabi Culture website as well. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Salama. I actually have a question now that will be relevant or something that maybe all panelists could answer, but while you're on the mic, Salama, maybe you can start the ball rolling. Ms. Noor Quek, who is a member of the UAE SBC Council, has said, thank you for the excellent discussion. And she says, where do you see are the best areas for UAE and Singapore women to work together and make a noticeable difference? Maybe you can start off and then I'll move to the other panelists.
Sure. Well, in specific, because of my field of work, I believe that knowledge in museums between both exchange in that field can work wonders. Knowing about the amazing museums in Singapore and also the museums currently here, but also future museums that will be developed here in Abu Dhabi or the other Emirates. I believe there should be a link between the two countries in this field, but also major field is crafts and handicrafts and design. I believe artisans working together, artisans and artists working together, creating a dialogue in that field would really benefit not only the two countries, but will benefit the whole cultural map and the globe as well. So I believe these two sectors in the cultural field and the culture and creative industry would really be a very inspiring collaboration.
Thank you, Salama. Now maybe we could have Shata. Shata, would you have any comments on the question on possible collaboration for UAE and Singapore women to work together and make a noticeable difference?
Hi, adding to Salama's point, I think that's a very interesting platform that we could interchange between the UAE and Singapore, serving as a platform that we can interchange fashion designers between Singapore and the UAE. So having designers, up-and-coming designers that are new and well-established in Singapore coming to Dubai or the UAE in general and showcase what they have to offer, because each country has a specific culture, specific crafts that they can showcase. So maybe interchanging, like maybe having an exhibition, one that showcases the Singaporean designers in Dubai, and then another one showcasing UAE designers in Singapore as well. So I think that is something that we probably need in both countries, just so that we are familiar with both aspects.
Thank you, Shata. There is a similar question before I pose the earlier one to Helene and Michelle. A similar question asking about Mr. Zen Khan, asking about what opportunities are available for businesses looking to support your collaboration, example in education and upskilling of women. If it's too specific, think about it. If it's relevant to your business, you could explain. If not, just about generally how tying up women in both countries, could help the areas of work and make a noticeable difference. Michelle,
So
would you like? Sorry, go ahead.
So basically what we envision for the brand in terms of education, how we support women in education as well is we tap into different cultures and different tribes. So for example, we have a collection that's coming up soon, and we're tapping into tribes in Tunis. It's a country in Africa, Northern Africa. So what we did is we went there and we looked at different tribes and different women who are actually skilled in crafts, and we tapped into that support, and we got our team members to learn from them as well, so that we interchange those culture and traditions. In terms of education, we strive as well to support education. So we are looking into as well building another school in partnership with the bikers as well. So we kind of do that regularly with them at the moment.
I see. Thank you for sharing that, Shata.
Thank you.
So back to the question again about what do you panelists see as the best areas for UAE and Singapore women to work together and make a noticeable difference? Maybe Michelle, do you have anything to add on that?
I think Singapore and UAE are very similar in certain aspects. We are open economies and we value global talent. And as trading hubs, these are the two essential keys to success. Connectivity, the, openness to the world, and as a trading hub to be very receptive to talent from all over the world. And I think if this, by having these embedded in the culture of both countries, I think that we will do well together.
Thank you. That's true. If we are both into that, then we can actually emphasize on it more when we collaborate from the two countries. Helene, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the key things as women as well is, like mentioned earlier, that women takes care of, whether if women's in business, women's take care of the home, women takes care of the kids, and women's takes care of the kitchen as well. I think one of the common topics both countries shares a lot is how do we educate people of all ages, especially the younger generation, to eat better for themselves, for their health, and for sustainability. And I think that this is something that women can drive a lot, because I believe that still today, women does have the most say in home kitchen as to what is put on the table. And I think that I'm a strong believer of educating through young age as to how people could do better for themselves in health. And I know that these topics are very strong in the countries that we operate in, Singapore and UAE, where a healthier choice of eating is strongly recommended. And I know, for example, Michelle is with a Heart Foundation oil, how do you call it, palm oil, cooking oil. We have Arlene. I'm sure many of our panelists here have other sustainability or healthier lifestyle that we can share together. And I think that is something that is quite a common topic.
Thank you, Helene. We have one more question, which is specific to business sector. So the question is from Amna Khalid. And the first part we will ask, the second part's a bit specific. The first part is actually, what are the business sectors that women have excelled in the UAE? I'm not sure if myself, Helene, and Michelle will be that aware, but maybe Shata and Salama, you're able to give us some insight as to which business sectors that you girls have noticed that women have excelled in UAE. Is there any particular sector, or actually women are everywhere nowadays, there's no particular sector?
I mean, as I said at the beginning, there isn't really any particular sector, because I saw part of the question was also like blockchain or AI. I really believe that women in the UAE today are everywhere, as you said, and they're excelling in all positions and in all sectors and in all businesses. I don't know, Shada, if you want to add on any of that.
I would agree with you, Salama. In terms of women, they can be absolutely everywhere. As you can see here in the UAE, they're in all fields, in all business areas as well. So you see women starting businesses, you see women in leading government roles, so they're everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's something changing around the world. Thanks for sharing the similar thoughts. We have a few more questions which we will try to continue answering on the Q&A chat separately, but for now we will close the panel discussion. Thank you, ladies, for all your time and for sharing your thoughts. I'd like to thank everyone at this panel discussion for your questions as well. I'll hand over this time back to Asma. Thank you, everybody. Asma?
Thank you very much, May. Thank you, panelists. And honestly speaking, and I wouldn't lie to you, as an Emirati woman, a leader, and working in Singapore, I'm very inspired by all the examples that we have here from both countries. It's an eye-opening that we had heard in the opening remarks and the keynote speaking, and also through the panelists, on what has been done, what are the efforts that are currently in progress, and what's the vision to the future. I think it's an eye-opening, it's a reminder, and it's also a motivation, at least for me, on how to proceed and how to reflect moving forward. So thank you all for your participation. Before we close this, I would like please to invite Dr. Brian Shigar for the closing remarks for this event. Please, Dr. Brian.
Thank you, Asma, for your kind introduction. Your Excellency Sim An, Singapore Senior Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and National Development, Your Excellency Shama Faris Al Mazrui, UAE Minister for Youth Affairs, Your Excellency Jamal Abdullah Al Suwaidi, Ambassador to Singapore and patron of the UASBC, distinguished speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I think you will agree as we come to the close of our seminar or webinar that it has been heartwarming to have listened to the array of eminent and successful Emirati and Singapore businesswomen who have shared their experiences and success stories with us all. Both UAE and Singapore are indeed fortunate that our societies and business environments encourage both women and men to attain their aspirations based on their ability and merit. It is gratifying that both Emirati and Singapore women who hitherto were not active participants in the business scene have over the past decade made exponential progress in various business and non-commercial undertakings across all sectors. What you have heard today is only a small cross-section of the successes achieved by businesswomen in both countries. We can rest assured that the healthy trend of increasing women participation in business will only grow from strength to strength. Both Singapore and the UAE have made it an objective of national importance to create a level playing field of equal opportunities for both genders and support and celebrate enthusiastically the rise of women in business. The UAE Singapore Business Council and our co-organizer, the UAE Embassy in Singapore, are delighted to have had the opportunity to organize this milestone event featuring women in business from both the UAE and Singapore. The quality and content of the various presentations and discussion were of the highest level, and I'm sure you will agree that we have been significantly educated on the success stories and challenges faced by Emirati and Singapore businesswomen. For those of you who are participating for the first time in our UASBC webinar, let me just say a few words about the UAE Singapore Business Council, which is the business nexus that promotes B2B or business-to-business connectivity between the two countries. Our patrons include the UAE Ambassador, His Excellency Jamal Al-Suwaidi, Chairman of Business China and former Senior Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Li Sham, and Chairman of the Ras Al Khaimah Chamber, His Excellency Muhammad Ali Al Nawami. Our executive committee comprises the large UAE companies operating in Singapore and the major Singapore companies that have business activities in the UAE. Our membership covers a variety of business sectors and consists of both companies as well as individuals. We are an active business council that organizes regularly seminars, webinars, quarterly talks, networking sessions with other chambers of commerce and trade associations. We also organize business delegations to the UAE, and hopefully once a travel corridor is established between the two countries, we shall be able to organize a few business delegations to the UAE for Expo 2020. It gives me great pleasure to be here and render these closing remarks. I want to thank our guests of honor, Her Excellencies Sim An and Shama Faris Al Mazrui, for very kindly sparing time from their busy schedules in being with us this afternoon and delivering their opening addresses. I thank His Excellency Jamal Abdullah Al Suwaidi for his support and co-organizing this webinar and for his welcome remarks. I also wish to record my gratitude for our distinguished keynote speakers, Ms. Chu Kek Kim and Dr. Lamia Fawaz, for their keynote addresses, where they shared their experiences and success factors in reaching their high positions in the corporate landscape of the two countries. During the panel discussion, our impressive panelists, namely Shata Al-Mullah, Michelle Chiu, Salama Al-Shamsi, and Helene Rochelle, moderated by none other than our own May Chan, who's an EXCO member of the UASBC, shared with us their unique perspectives from their respective business sectors, as well as some of the common challenges faced by women in business. Thank you very much, Esma, for your brilliant role as an MC. And last but not least, on behalf of the UAE Embassy and the UAE Singapore Business Council, I thank all participants from both the UAE and Singapore for being part of this interesting webinar, and we look forward for your participation in our future events. Thank you, and I'll pass you back to our MC, Esma.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shigar, Dr. Brian Shigar, and to all the stars in this room and the stars beyond. Thank you very much for your listening, for your participating. And for more photos and videos in this event, please do visit our website, www.uaespc.com, and watch our social media channels for more information and stay in touch. Thank you very much all, and have a good evening.